Hey, think you know which way it's going to go in the car? Yeah, see? Because that's not how I usually say it, but that's how I'm saying it now. Then you should head to Sports Interaction. When the puck, when you start your car,
there you go. Sports Interaction has you covered. Pre-race, live betting on all major sports, and prop bets. Want to bet? Head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. That's sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. But only if you're 19 plus. Please play responsibly.
Welcome to Nailing the Apex, everyone. I'm Tim Haraney. Please head over to Spotify, give us a 5-star rating and a follow. Same goes with Apple Podcasts as well. You can watch us on YouTube. You can follow me on social media, like I already said, at Tim Haraney. Joining me today is Steve Dangle.
Hey, yeah, big F1 guy, Steve Dangle.
Oh, I cannot wait. But you brought me on for a very specific reason, because we got to talk about the Italian Grand Prix.
It's Monza, baby.
Oh,
and by the way, Jesse is here, but he's refusing to put himself on camera. He got a lot of Botox yesterday. He's looking a little puffy.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
Somebody has to switch to the cameras. I'm on audio, but I'm here.
He's here.
You know?
And it's important because there was some Mercedes news.
There was.
Yeah, picked the wrong day for Botox, Jesse. It's a shame.
So we've got some breaking news, obviously, guys, with Lewis Hamilton signing on with Mercedes till 2025. Steve, you definitely know who Lewis Hamilton is.
I actually do.
Right. So,
all right. Here, you want to blow Steve's mind?
Yeah.
How much money do you think Lewis Hamilton's going to make?
Like per year?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Austin Matthews just signed a contract for 13.25, so the number is going to be more than that.
Yes.
I'm going to say a little more than 3 times more than that. I'm going to say 40 million.
Oh, it's not. Okay, so we were discussing this in our group chat this morning.
Yeah.
So the rumor, and this is just a rumor, it would be about 50 million euros. So whatever.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Whatever that equates over to
It's
75?
probably 65 million Canadian.
So it would be on par. I think it would be on par with what Max Verstappen's making down at Red Bull Racing. So and I think that was a big thing for Lewis as well, right? If he was going to come back to Formula One, if he was going to come back with Mercedes, it had to be on his terms and obviously making what he made the season before and plus.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, what everyone in sports in this very small world is saying is my child, Leo, who's 3, all this hockey stuff, like all the sticks we got him, the nets, we should throw all those.
Don't waste your time.
But before he gets too interested. Yeah. Because they're actually building a racetrack out near me in Ajax. I think it's a Porsche track.
Porsche track, yeah.
Yeah. So I should get him involved in that.
It's pretty expensive.
Yeah.
Well, what did they say? To get a driver to F4, which is 4 levels below, is like a $2 million process.
Oh my
if
God.
they're good enough.
So so here's what's got to happen. I got to become a professional hockey player.
Yes.
In order to afford Leo being a professional race.
It's an investment in yourself and Leo. If you do that, yeah.
Poor kid, he's screwed.
Yeah.
So like when we were, for example, when we were racing karts, so when I was racing karts, like we're going back like a long way here. It was probably for, I would just say like a Rotax junior full season was probably around 25,000. Now it's probably way more than that. Like I've been hearing like some people doing shifter karts for close to 80,000 a year.
Yeah.
80,000.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nuts. So the thing now is they're trying to find. I think Max Verstappen's trying to do this with his. He's trying to launch a GT3 team and he's trying to launch a sim racing team, and the sims are so good now that they're trying to say, okay, if you can be really good at sim, then later on in life, then we can put you in a real car. So
what?
Because it's so expensive, the only way to even the playing field is to do it on a computer. And then, or like video game system.
Man, I wish that worked for Chell.
Yeah, I know, right?
It does
You'd be
not. I'd be an unreal stay-at-home defenseman, stick checking, but it turns out you got to be able to move.
Yeah.
It's really difficult.
Isn't that wild?
It's Adam wild. Goodness.
Also, extending their contract with Mercedes is George Russell. He's extending till 2025. And so, Steve, like having Lewis Hamilton and George Russell on your team, I would say that's probably like the strongest driver pairing in Formula One currently. And so you're having 2 of, the best on your team.
Okay.
Is only going to help you, but it could create a lot of controversy later on down the road.
Why is that, Tim?
If both of them are trying to like battle for the championship.
So I think they made a film about this.
Probably. I mean, I'm trying to think.
Which one?
Talladega Nights.
Talladega Nights. That's right.
I seem to remember this.
Totally different sport, totally different everything. So like NASCAR and Formula One are just two totally different, totally different things.
Got it.
There was a really bad IndyCar film with Sylvester Stallone years ago. Really bad.
Well, if it was bad, then we can't use it.
Yeah, you're right.
It's got to be parallel. One marries the other's wife. Like, just assumes his life after he falls off.
Sure. Yeah.
That needs to happen. He gets a job selling pizzas in the middle of the movie, and he comes back.
Reconnects with his dad, puts a cougar in the car.
Yeah.
Yeah. No big deal.
That's my favorite part of the whole movie.
It's such a that whole movie was a mess. But, for a guy like Jesse, who was sitting across the room.
Yes.
How did you feel hearing that news today?
I was just thankful it got done. Like I was getting impatient with how long it was taking. It's understandable that it takes a while because it's Lewis Hamilton and there's so much involved in signing a contract with one of the biggest athletes in the entire world. But like we're more than halfway through the season. We needed to get something done here, and now it's finally signed. It's like everybody can exhale. We have something on paper.
Yeah. I agree with that too. And it's something that you and I have talked about before at length on this show, is just why would it take them so long to try and get Lewis Hamilton, signed up and, committed for a few years. And, we also had the rumors about him going to Ferrari and
They called or something.
I mean, like there was everything you could think of under the sun, but like, I think at the end of the day, Jesse says it best, where it's, you're trying to lock up one of the biggest athletes in the world, like trying to negotiate and work out a contract that size that makes sense. I mean, that's got to take forever.
Well, so I was going to ask, would the holdup have been more likely on Mercedes' side or on Hamilton's? Because he's obviously in high demand.
Yeah. So what Lewis told us, a number of different times is it's with he always says it's with the lawyers, and what he means by that is he's leaving it with the lawyers to firm up what the details are, and who knows what those details could be, right? It could be that, I don't know, Mercedes, I'm just throwing things out here. That could be Mercedes pays for, first class travel everywhere he goes, or, whatever, right?
Right.
And it's all those fine little details that needed to get worked out. It wasn't so much from my understanding, it wasn't so much the amount and the term, it was more all of the other individual things that came with Lewis Hamilton.
Okay. Just the finer details.
Yeah, it's kind of like, for, what was it? It was Austin Matthews who got locked up earlier this week, or last week.
Yeah, 13.25.
And so like that probably took a while because of he's the best player on the team.
Right.
And that takes a while to figure out the nitty gritty of what are we going to do with this guy?
See, that's interesting because like in hockey, I guess they don't really have like all the little intricacies. Like it's just implied like, well, you're going to pay for my travel, you're going to pay for this, you're going to pay for that. I'm sure there's some shady under the table, under the collective bargaining agreement stuff they just sort of ignore, like especially for the top stars. But yeah, I guess the contracts are allowed to be a little more in depth in F1.
Yeah, big time.
Well, there is a salary cap. They call it a cost cap. But
the drivers don't factor into
the top three salaries.
What?
On the team do not factor in.
The athlete doesn't factor into the cost cap?
No.
I love that.
But they weren't going to do that. There was a point. So if we go back to like when, so Liberty Media is the company that owns Formula One now, and they also own like a lot of North American sporting enterprises,
like the Braves and stuff,
and all that. And so when Liberty Media came in, bought up Formula One, they started to talk to the teams about trying to get there to be a cost cap. Okay. Because with Formula One back in the day, like teams were spending like $500 million, $600 million on a season. Just on one season alone.
Yeah.
But they weren't really making that money back, and the prize money that's paid out at the end of the year to the constructors, it wasn't even getting close to what these teams were spending. And so essentially Liberty Media is trying to save the teams from themselves to make sure that their value is a lot higher than at the time of what it was. Like Williams in 2021 or whatever, I believe it's, if I'm losing the date, I think it's 2021 or 2020 or 2020, 2021. It was around 175 million is what they were sold for. But now you look at that team, they're probably close to 700 million, maybe more.
In 2 or 3 years.
See, now this is on a playing field I understand.
Yeah.
Like
GMs from them saving GMs from themselves.
Yeah, well, I hate the salary cap in the NHL, but like it's hard to deny that they were being stupid with their money, and like, you know, you have a 30-team league at the time or whatever it was, and like 25 of them are losing money. Yeah. It's kind of tough.
And part of it is the teams also at that time of that cost cap being introduced, they were talking about putting the drivers into their own sort of cost cap, and it was around 30 million for 2 drivers for like 1 season, and the drivers were like, no, forget that. Because like if you look at like Schumacher, like back in the day when Michael was winning, you know, all of his championships, he was the highest paid athlete for a few years, and I think he was in around, I'm just throwing numbers around here, but I think it was around 80 to 100 million a year like this guy was making. And
yeah. Yeah.
And it's like,
crazy.
why would you, there's no, if I was a former driver, I would not agree to that whatsoever. I'd be like, forget it, I'm going to make as much as I want, right?
Of course.
Of course.
Because you're also like,
sounds good.
You're also like a billboard at the same time, right? Like, you're wearing the team gear, you have like all the sponsors on there, you need to be compensated for that as well. So
right. Okay. So that's again, I'm coming in like naked to this conversation here. So I'm an F1 fan. I'm tuning in. I'm tuning in for what's the draw? Is it the driver? Am I gonna notice the tweaks that they've done to their car? Or vehicle?
Yeah, you will. You will. Yeah, I mean, race to race. I mean, so the team I cheer for, and you've seen them, they're orange. They're McLaren.
Yes.
I give you the color first because I know that's not, the brand name. It doesn't mean anything to you.
It's one of those things where I'm like, McLaren.
Yeah.
Yes.
They were running back of the pack. They were running out of 20 cars. They were finishing like 18 and 19 at the beginning of the season. They are now finishing regularly second and fifth, and up in the top spot because they were able to upgrade their car throughout the season.
Up in the podium.
That's right.
Conversation.
On the podium. Yeah. And I think you'll like the thing about Formula One is that a lot of the times your teammate is your greatest competitor because you're the only 2 drivers on the grid with the same car.
Sounds really toxic.
It's dramatic. Yeah. It's dramatic.
I like that you're like, yes.
Yeah. So Monza.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Steve, first off, the thing I think you need to know about this weekend, Monza is a very special race because it's fast. But you do this, right? That is the shape of the racetrack.
You told me that before the show. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
That has to be on purpose. I refuse to believe
the Italian fingers together with the thumb to really emphasize.
You all know
that's the shape of the track right there. Right there.
So does that mean there's like a really, really sharp turn at the top?
It's called Parabolica, and no, it's like not that sharp. I've raced.
They name the corners, by the way.
Yeah,
they name each corner.
I've raced on this track before in the past during my professional years, and like it is not a slow corner. It's like it's fast.
Okay,
it's fast, big time fast. But yeah, I didn't know that until someone sent that to me on social media. Yeah, I was just like, hold on a second, like that's not how the track was like literally.
It's a little
purpose.
Well, remember back in the day, okay, back in the day there used to be an oval. There was an oval part to this track, right? And then it went into this infield section, which Adam is doing the thing. And so back in the day, it was different when they originally built it. So it just kind of turned out to be that way.
It's great.
It's on purpose. It's 100% on purpose.
Have you ever been to that region of Italy?
I've never been to Italy.
Okay.
How many times have you been to your wife's family's origin country?
I've spent 2 weeks in Aberdeen 3 separate times.
And you've never been to Italy?
Never been to Italy. I've been to mainland Europe once. I went to Amsterdam, did a bunch of drugs.
Who wears the pants there, my friend? Like a little bit of balance.
The Scottish woman. Like what? Who wears the Scottish woman? Obviously. What? No, I do want to go to my mom's family's homeland. What part of Italy is this?
It's in Milan.
Oh.
So I used to live there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because when I used to race over in Europe, it was part of like the home base where I traveled out of. And so Milan was like the sort of hub. And then we used Monza, the racetrack they're at this weekend, as a testing ground. We also used it to race at as well at the same time.
Okay, that's where my sister-in-law's family is from.
It's a
The
beautiful
Scots
part of the
came
world.
to Canada. They married a bunch of Italians and settled down.
It's a really nice, it's a really beautiful place in the world, let me tell you. I mean, the architecture, I'm not into like, going to church and all that kind of stuff.
What about high fashion?
Churches-
You into that? Milan's known for that too.
It's I definitely didn't fit in. We'll just leave it at that.
I like your t-shirt.
Yeah, I like it too. But
It's a good t-shirt.
I mean, at the time when I was there, I was like 26, 27. Like, I didn't know what the hell I was doing there. I couldn't speak Italian. I would just order pizza like for dinner every day. I had no idea what I was doing.
I mean, what else are you supposed
Yeah.
to
Actually,
do? Yeah,
Best pizza in the world for sure.
that's what you're supposed
Sounds
to do,
great.
man. It sounds like you nailed it.
I did my best, right? That's all I could do. I want to talk about Lance Stroll because there was a bit of Lance Stroll news that came out today. So,
Canadian.
Hey, you like that? He was on your show.
Lance actually hasn't been on the show, but we're going to be getting him soon. Yes.
Oh, I blew it.
Not Lance.
Not Lance. We had Gunther Steiner.
Gunther
and
Steiner.
I knew that.
We had Logan Sargent.
Oh, okay.
He's an F1 driver.
He's the American.
He's American.
He's the guy I was trying to figure out if I was related to him.
Oh.
'Cause the
Logan
name
Sargent.
Sargent's in the family.
Oh, okay. All right, good. Steve's obsessed with his family tree. Let's talk about Lance Stroll.
Okay, so
It was my COVID project. I was bored.
anyway, so there
This is
was
a great idea, Tim.
Yeah, that was great. Actually, it's not working out too bad. So there was, we were in a group chat, right? And so Adam texted me last week, and he's like, "Is Lance Stroll going to play tennis?"
What?
It's like, no.
This is how wild Formula One rumors are. This is why I love this sport so much.
So
the drama is
professionally?
off the charts.
So it started with like believe it was David Croft, and he was on a podcast talking about how I think for him he was just saying that there needed to be more commitment from Lance, and he felt that he wasn't going to last long in Formula One, and it was like, okay, well, what is he going to do? And he was sort of joking, but he was going to go play tennis as like a career because he was really good at it, and I'm like, oh my god. Anyways, so today, Mike Crack, who's the team principal, so sort of like the head coach of the team.
Yeah.
So he came out, squashed the rumors. So him and Fernando Alonso will be back at Aston Martin for next year.
Squash the tennis rumors?
It's people, I think at that point, like asking about Lance's commitment because it's once you start, like for Formula One, sometimes in the paddock, it's like once one sort of rumor gets started, it kind of like just snowballs.
Right.
You know when it's clickbait, right? So
Yeah.
what happens though is that if it's in one language, in this case it's English, and it's lifted from a podcast, what they'll do is they'll clickbait you, but they'll do it in Dutch or Italian or Spanish or Portuguese or something, and it'll be like, is Lance Stroll leaving for tennis? And then it'll get retranslated back into English, and people will talk about it as though it's a real rumor.
Oh, maximum chaos.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's-
All right.
And you kind of get that with like all the publications, like Germany and Italian.
Oh, the German press is
French.
wild.
So there's
Yeah.
there's a lot of it, and like sometimes if you don't speak any of those languages, you have to figure out how to translate it. But then when the translation comes through, it's different.
Purple monkey dishwasher.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's very different.
It became less about the tennis, actual him going to play, and more about, is he committed to being an F1 driver? Is he into this sport completely? Because if he's not, then they got to start looking somewhere.
Well, I don't know how you get to Formula One and are not committed. I mean, like it's pretty. At least the reality with Lance Stroll is, yes, his father owns the team, but he's won at like every level. It wasn't like he was a bad driver. He's better than half the drivers on the grid. But he broke, Steve, a week and a half or 2 weeks before the season start. He broke both wrists in a bike accident.
Oh, not even driving.
And no, just cycling in Spain, and then went out and drove and finished 8th.
With 2 broken wrists.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
So like his wrists are not healed yet. You couldn't have possibly
And
done
that's
that.
why the questions and the rumors were kind of like unfounded. It's like, okay, he's an F1 driver. He is in the highest level of the sport. Of course he's committed.
Yeah.
Of course he wants to be here. Look at his track record. And that's why it got kind of out of control and ridiculous to a point now.
Yeah, I mean, I think like one of the things with like F1 drivers is like the training aspect of it, right? And some people may not understand, but like these guys are training 30, 40 hours a week, physical fitness, because it's really freaking hard to drive a race car, drive it fast without, yeah, like you can, and so there is a lot of training that goes into it. And so if you're not committed to, trust me, I know, if you're not committed to being a racing driver, then you're not going to commit to doing the training that's required, because it's a lot, right? Like you got to think about, you're pushing yourself for 30, 40 hours a week. It's very demanding. For Lance, like in the wintertime, like one of the things he was doing is, so he would come to Canada, he would go out west, he would go skiing, he would do hella skiing. But on top of all of that, he would bring like all of his training equipment over to Canada with him.
Wow.
So, like everything that he needed, he would have it wherever he was going so he could continue to train. So he would go and do hella skiing for 6 hours.
Well, they make $11 billion, so I guess they
Yeah. But like it shows the commitment though, right? Like he would go out, he would do, all the skiing in the world with his friends and whatever. But then he also knew that he had to do the training. And so he would go after he was done doing like hella skiing, snowboarding, whatever.
Yeah.
He would go and be 2 hours into the gym and right after that.
So what sort
And
of
that's
things?
in one day. That's one day.
That's madness, first of all. But what sort of things are they doing in the gym?
Like like so much different stuff. I mean, like it's different for every driver because you have to do what you enjoy doing the most.
Of course.
I can use myself as a reference because I know what I like to do. I like to swim, I like to bike, and I like to run, and I like to do 2 days of strength and sort of map those out within my week. And so, bike rides started at 2 hours, but then they went to 4 hours, and then they went to like 90 minutes running off the bike. As soon as you park your bike, you go 90 minutes running.
Wow.
And then the next day it would be like a 2 hour swim, followed by an hour and a half in the gym doing strength. And the next day you'd be doing 21-kilometer run. Then the day after that, you'd go back to the bike. You'd be doing sprint intervals, hill intervals. So it's like a lot of physical activity for sure. But
That's madness.
I mean,
man.
these guys are doing 90 minutes core strength. These guys are doing like,
The neck exercises, you should see that.
neck exercise.
They,
that makes a lot
they
of
strap a band around their neck and they just do this for
yeah,
hours.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
Or they take like 25-pound plates and they attach it to this headgear and they like do these like head lifts with 25-pound plates to strengthen everything down and through here.
They do the
it's a lot.
nutcase boxer thing where they put a towel in their mouth and bite it and have the weight on the towel.
They actually, they have like this really like, they have this like,
Sophisticated.
yeah.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Boxing's nuts for that. I don't know why they do that. I still don't know why.
Listen, I saw a TikTok with Mike Tyson where he did that in 1984, and now I think they do the same thing today.
Well,
right.
the good thing about fitness is not changed in the last 30 years.
Yes, that's what they always say.
They always say that.
Well, I think like for like a driver like, Lance, it's got to be annoying when you're hearing all these things all the time.
Yeah.
Especially this season too. Like it didn't start off great for Lance, obviously, with like Adam had mentioned breaking both wrists and being so injured getting into the car. Regardless of that, the gap between him and Fernando Alonso, who's his teammate, he's a 2-time F1 world champion and considered to be one of the best, racing drivers of all time, like racing drivers
All time.
as a whole.
Wow.
Like we're talking like Fernando's a whole other story. Whatever. We'll get into it. So for Fernando, he's a driver who's pretty much raced in so many different things and he's won in so many different things. Like he's won the 24 Hours of Le Mans twice.
I know that one.
Yeah, he's won the World Endurance Championship. He's won 2 F1 championships. He's been the Indy 500. He never won it, but he still was able to get himself qualified for the Indy 500. So when I say like all-around driver, he's in my opinion, he is the best, one of the best, if not. So for Lance, like it's a tall order to be going up against that.
Right.
Right? He's Lance is relatively young, and Fernando is getting older. But he's still, I would say, peak Alonso. Like he's still the best he's ever been. And for Lance, like he's got to try and match up to that. And so when you're
Imagine it's like I would compare Fernando Alonso to like Sidney Crosby, like probably
that's a good comparison.
probably the best of his generation until Lewis Hamilton or in our case Connor McDavid comes along, right? Probably should have a couple more championships than he does, and it's like taking Sidney Crosby and then putting like William Nylander on his team and saying, how come you're not Sidney Crosby, William Nylander?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's just like it's not.
But I'm not.
It's just not a fair comparison, right?
So is there like a potential for Stroll to go to a quote unquote lesser team to get a bigger opportunity?
His dad owns the team.
Is Dad? Oh well, then no.
But he has raced for those teams. He raced for Williams. Williams was a back of the pack team. A Racing Point, I think.
Force India.
Yeah, Force India. So like that has happened, but they've sort of the Stroll family. It's a whole thing. Lawrence Stroll, by the way, founded Canada Life, the insurance company.
Oh wow.
So
wow.
And Lawrence Stroll was the guy apparently that brokered the deal between Live Golf and the PGA at his daughter's wedding.
What?
This summer.
Adam Wylde.
Yeah.
In breaking news. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah. He apparently got both sides together. That's how that all came together.
Where did you even?
Well, I'm a nerd. I love this stuff. I love the drama of this sport. It's crazy.
What is it with weddings in Ontario?
I know. The wedding was not in Ontario.
Oh no. Okay.
No.
What?
It was in Italy.
Vineyards. Oh, so do them.
Yeah.
Lawrence got a lot of his money from clothing brands. So like he helped turn around Michael Kors, made Michael Kors what it is today.
Did he not do Hilfiger as well?
I was just going to say Tommy Hilfiger as well. And so like for Lawrence, he's actually been involved in Formula One through these clothing properties. So like for Tommy Hilfiger, they sponsored like Michael Schumacher for a number of different years, Ferrari as well. And so, Lance and Lawrence have been around F1 for many, many years. Even Lance, when he was like 8 years old, like he would be in the Ferrari garage, like watching Michael Schumacher and stuff like that, like just stuff that he loved to do, right? And for Lawrence, he's got a massive car collection, sports cars, whatever you want, awesome, beautiful cars, and he likes, back in the day, he would do a lot of track days, so he would be on the racetrack, whatever. So the family has like a ton of passion for racing already ingrained in it. It's been in the sport for a really, really long time.
Sounds somewhat like Steph Curry.
Yeah, because his dad was a Raptor,
his dad, like Del Curry was like a professional, like like Lawrence obviously had his businesses that he had to do. So.
I'm just picturing Steph on the court at the Air Canada Center when he was a little kid,
playing Vince Carter,
shooting threes and stuff like that. That's the equivalent.
Yeah,
I know it's
a
not
fair
the best,
point.
but
No, I mean,
was never a race car driver.
No,
no.
That being the pretty key difference there.
like he did some like Ferrari challenge stuff and did a bunch of track days and all that kind of stuff. Always doing something involving racing, right? Like he always had that passion for it, which is awesome. But at the same time, like for Lance, you kind of learn that. Like for me, my dad, like he loved race cars, and I loved race cars because he loved race cars. And then eventually, once I started to get into it, I'm like, this is really awesome. Like I really want to do this for a living. And so for Lance, starting at a really young age in go-karts, like really young, so like 6 years old. Like,
see, it's so good hearing like you got into racing because your dad was into racing.
Oh yeah.
I sort of went against everything my dad wanted.
If you had gotten into all the things your dad loved, what would you be into right now?
I'd be a drummer.
You'd be into heavy metal.
Heavy metal. He's a 66-year-old man in a heavy metal band. Yeah. Plays drums.
What's the name of the band?
Atomic Tomb.
That's the best.
Yeah, it's a great name. But no, when I was younger, he was into like drumming and like heavy metal and rock and stuff like that. And I wasn't. But now later in life, we share tinnitus. So it's okay.
Whereabouts?
No, that's tendonitis.
Oh, tendonitis.
No, we got the ringing in our ear.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
You're like Uncle Leo. I still got the ringing in.
Yeah. Huh? Yeah, that's why I named my kid Leo. How do you know?
Amazing.
So
Lance is staying in Formula One is the point here?
That's essentially.
All right, cool.
Yes, essentially.
To the surprise of nobody.
Yes. So Adrian Newey. So we all know who Adrian Newey is. So Adrian Newey.
For sure.
So he's basically the mastermind behind this Red Bull Racing RB19 race car you see on the track right now in Formula One.
To give you an idea, Steve, there have been 14 Grand Prix this year?
Yes.
Red Bull has won every single one.
Yes.
Okay, so I have a very stupid question.
Yeah.
So, and this will show my ignorance.
That's fine.
But like when you say McLaren, I'm like, I know those cars. Mm-hmm. When you say Ferrari, I know those cars. What's a Red Bull car?
Oh, it's a good question.
It basically says Red Bull on the side of it.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
But like
this
That's
color.
the team.
That's the team.
no,
name.
I know it's the team, but like what is the
So not all the teams
I know I
on the
can't-
grid are manufacturers.
You don't have to be a car manufacturer to be an F1 team.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
so we can have an SDPN car.
Yes.
If we bought an SDPN F1 team, it would be an SDPN car.
And it'd be powered by Honda, Mercedes, Ford, Ferrari, whichever engine manufacturer we want.
Yeah.
So,
You
For
don't
example,
have to be a
like
car company to be an F1.
I wanted to go to a dealership and get a Red Bull car.
so for example, Steve, like Aston Martin, who Lance Stroll races for, Fernando Alonso. Okay, so Aston Martin is a car brand.
Yes.
But before the team was called Aston Martin, it was called Racing Point. Before Racing Point, it was called Force India. Before Force India, there were two others, and then there was Jordan Grand Prix. And Jordan Grand Prix is where all of that Formula One heritage that Aston Martin comes from. The factory, the land, all of it. So originally, Aston Martin started as Jordan Grand Prix.
and Jordan,
Like the country
is
of
it?
Jordan?
No.
Eddie Jordan
Okay.
is the name of the guy.
And he's nuts.
Named it after himself.
He's a crazy
Michael.
guy.
Yeah.
Not Michael. I was
Not
like,
like Nike.
So wait, the shoes bought the race car team.
They literally could. If Nike wanted to buy an F1 team, they could.
They probably could.
The Nike car.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know?
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a sponsorship.
Got it.
And Red Bull does it because it's some of, they sponsor all extreme sports. It's some of the best advertising they can do. Look at them. They've won 14 races in a row this year.
Yeah, and they're on like they're
It's historic.
They're on a trajectory to win every single Grand Prix this season. So every single race.
That sounds good.
They're on trajectory to do that.
They're pretty good.
No one in Formula One has ever done that.
Wow.
No team has ever won every single race in a season. The closest that anyone got was like 1988. It was McLaren. They got within one.
Oh. So we're witnessing greatness.
Yes.
Is what you're saying. Wow.
Some people hate it,
A lot of people.
but I think
I don't hate it.
I don't hate it. I think
awesome.
I think greatness. I think sometimes greatness is boring. I think Tom Brady winning all those Super Bowls got a little bit monotonous. But when you look back on what he did, like Jesse, I remember Jesse was like years ago. She's like, Tom Brady's the GOAT. He's like he's the best player that's ever played football, like best QB that's ever played football. And people were really upset with you about that because they want to take away from that.
Yeah.
But the reality is,
I think you've nailed it with the greatness is boring. You know, when one team wins, when the Warriors went 73-9.
Oh.
They won 73 games.
I know,
You
it's
how boring
wild.
that is.
That's
boring.
Wild.
Yeah,
You know,
and
you watch a whole season, every game they win. That's extremely boring.
it's better that they lost because
yeah, they didn't win.
Huge story. Right?
Yeah.
Well, and like it's like when the Raptors played the Warriors, there was a map that showed the majority of the United States was cheering for the Raptors. They weren't cheering for the Raptors. They were cheering against the Warriors.
That's right.
Because we're sick of these guys. They
Yeah.
they always win. And I can see how it'd be a little monotonous during, but once the accomplishment is made, if they go 14 for 14, you said?
Well, it would be 22 races. So they would
22
Yeah.
consecutive races.
If they're able to do it, hold on to this till November. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's madness.
But to
Yeah.
get to that point,
Yeah.
1 through 21, where we get to the last race, that's extremely boring. You know, every time you turn this on, you know the end result.
It heats up though. I think as you
I
get
agree.
closer to
But
22.
the average fan looking at it when we're 14 races in, there's been a lot of conversation this season about like, hey, you're losing fans because it's boring because you turn on every single time and Red Bull wins. But when
you'll get 'em
you
back.
look back and you get to the point where we're at 21, we're at even when we get to like 18 and 19, it looks real. Then you're gonna start getting everybody on board. But just that little lull in the middle, you gotta see the end result here before we get to there.
Well, and I think everybody wants to rush in and have the hottest take that gets the most play on Twitter. But the reality of the situation, when you look at the sport, is that the second place battle right now, which, by the way, sometimes the fourth place battle or the fifth place battle, because each of them get money for where they place in the standings,
A lot of money, too.
can be very exciting. So they have the top three, the mid three, and then the bottom four. That's how you usually break it off. And it's like, who's going to win each of those spots? And you could see teams climbing and that sort of thing. One of the things that I have found so fascinating about this season is that for second place, there's a legitimate 4-team battle.
Yeah.
There's one team like Mercedes, which is further ahead, although they've had a couple of mediocre races. Ferrari, which we thought was dead ringer for second, is fallen off a cliff. They're not racing well. They had an okay weekend in Holland, but like it was like okay for Carlos Sainz anyway,
Yeah,
one of the
Sainz
drivers.
was all right.
McLaren, which has the least points of all the teams, is charging up the podium, and then Aston Martin, which were 9th last year.
7th at the end of last year, but they were like one of the worst teams at the start of the season.
And they are regularly challenging for top spots.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's an amazing race.
It just sounds like people are mad Red Bull's winning.
I think, and you know what, man?
But like, it's not a bad thing.
If you were a Red Bull fan, would you hate it?
Probably not.
No, you probably fucking love it.
Probably not. In fact, I think I found my team. Let's go. We're winners. Always have been.
What did Adrian Newey say?
Yeah, so that kind of leads us into the topic of their driver, Max Verstappen. So Newey said earlier this week, quote, "Never in my career have I been associated with a team where we managed to win the first 13 races. Previously, it's been like the first 6 or something, but it's nothing like this." He also said that Max is clearly one of the all-time greats. So when Adrian Newey kind of says something like this, I mean, obviously he's the guy who built the car. One of the people who built the car, but outside of all of that, when you're saying like Max Verstappen's one of the great, you're talking like Michael Schumacher, Lewis Hamilton, Ayrton Senna, Alain Prost. Like these are huge names in motorsports, and you're now going to be putting Max Verstappen into that same conversation. And after what happened in Zandvoort, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with him. Like I wouldn't say like he's wrong, because I think he's absolutely pretty spot on with this.
Got a huge plane flying overhead. I'm not sure if that's coming through on the microphone. We never get that.
That was really odd.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Yeah. Never get that over here. I mean, it's kind of funny because it's like the greatest in hockey terms, it'd be the greatest general manager of all time. Or I guess the greatest, the constructor of the team, the general manager, and the greatest player of all time being on the same team at the same time, or one of. And this Adrian Newey guy, he's an unbelievable guy. He's already won, I think, 6 world championships.
Tons,
yeah. So, but for him to say that is pretty special, right? You're talking about a kid. Max Verstappen is still 24.
Yeah, he's young.
Wow, really?
He's been
early
racing in the
20s.
sport since he was 17.
Yeah.
Dude, I hear his name so much. I would have guessed as an outsider he's like 40.
Yeah.
Like I hear his name all the time.
Yeah, because like one of the, like he's on this really impressive like win streak at the moment. So he's won 9 consecutive Grand Prix so far. And so he equaled Sebastian Vettel's record last weekend in Holland at the Dutch Grand Prix. And what's big about that is that, like, you talk about Michael Schumacher, who's won everything, Lewis Hamilton, who's won everything. Neither one of those drivers have ever had a consecutive win streak like that.
Wow.
And those are big time names that I'm throwing around here. So this weekend, Verstappen could set the record at 10 consecutive wins. So if you think about what for in the NHL, like, do you remember the last team to have a really impressive like consecutive winning streak?
Probably the 2013 Blackhawks. They won something like 22 games.
And that's like
it's madness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And
So-
they coincidentally won the cup.
There's as
Yeah.
much chaos. I would say there's as much chaos in a hockey game as there is in a Formula One race, right? You know, one puck goes the wrong way or one tire slips the wrong way, and the race is over.
Yeah.
And it's like it's literally you're walking a knife's edge the whole time. So it's kind of funny that people can denigrate this because, listen, man, I don't want Red Bull to win. I don't want McLaren to win. But it's pretty unbelievable to watch. It really is.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, like, when you get, Steve, if you get the chance to watch this weekend, because I'm hoping that this is like an educational course and maybe you'll jump in.
I hope the race is good too. Like,
Monza's
if you do
always
end
a
up
fun
watching
race.
it, I hope it's a great race too.
I'm more interested than I was like 20 minutes ago or whatever. Like, I'm serious. You're bringing me in.
I think like one of the things though at the end of this weekend, I would be shocked if Verstappen hasn't set that record. Like he's been he's been phenomenal. And people are gonna be like, oh, but he's in the best car. But like he's also like destroying his teammate.
Yeah.
Like it's not even close.
Yeah. His teammate remember, your teammate is the only other person driving the same car as you are.
Right.
And his teammate is
referee.
regularly like not qualifying that well and then having to climb back up the grid. And the car's so fast that he can do that. But like, I mean, Jesse, we were talking in our group chat about Sergio Perez specifically, and up until he had a good race last week, but up until then, it seemed like he was completely. It was just a confidence thing.
Yeah, there's no excuses for him. Yeah. He has the best car, the second best car on the entire grid, and because Max is so fast, Sergio needs to be number 2 every single time if Max is number 1. Yeah. And if he's not number 2, it is a complete failure of that weekend. Yeah. And consistently, he's not. So I don't know how we look at Sergio Perez going forward. I know Christian Horner, you're talking about it last episode, how he came out and gave him a vote of confidence that that's our driver through next season. But as you mentioned, that can sometimes be the kiss of death for drivers. You know, they say the words to the media, and then they come back next season and they say, you know what, things change, and we're making a change here. And with Sergio, they got to be losing confidence in this guy and his confidence to drive this car.
So with Formula One, Steve, where it's like they do qualifying, usually you're only... If you're not that, like, if you don't have like a ton of confidence in the car in qualifying, like usually you're still within 3 to 5 tenths of a second.
Right.
Not 3 to 5 seconds, 3 to 5 tenths of a second.
With Perez, after qualifying at the Dutch Grand Prix, he was 1.3 seconds.
Wow. Okay. So that's quite the margin.
Like, that shows you a couple things. One, obviously, I mean, Sergio's having some issues, but 2, Verstappen is just like, he's in a different area code at
God tier.
Like he's on another level at the moment, and it's like there's not many drivers on the grid who can do what he's doing right now, even if they were in the same piece of machinery. Like even Fernando Alonso was in the post-race press conference in Zandvoort at the Dutch Grand Prix after the race, saying like, you know, this guy's like he's driving incredible, and usually as a driver you don't necessarily compliment your competitors.
Especially Fernando.
Yeah.
Especially
as an outsider, it seems very contentious.
Oh yeah, but you know what? It's funny. They get along, but also they get in each other's shit, and it gets like, you know, they Fernando, for whatever reason, his image for a long time is, you know, whoever the champion was that year was the good guy, and then Fernando was like the heel, and like the face and the heel, and Fernando has sort of embraced that with like a wink. He sometimes will talk about himself in the third person. His quotes are always the best. Yeah. But he's got the driving to back it up. So it's like, what are you going to do? And he is 40?
Yeah, he's 42.
He lost 10.
Wow.
And these are not big men.
Like, wow.
He lost 10 pounds this past year getting ready for this year just because he wanted to make sure that he was, and he's regularly been one of the best drivers on the grid. 42. Yeah, he's
42.
He's awesome. You will love Fernando Alonso.
Like, what kind of a frame are we talking here? Like that he's losing 10 pounds.
Strong. Like,
well, he's strong, but he's what is he, 5?
He's about 5'8", I think, 5'7".
10 pounds off a guy who's probably, they're rail thin. Like,
that's pretty significant.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Some of these guys aren't like that. I would say like Fernando's probably one of the shorter drivers on the grid. Like Hamilton's around my height, and then a lot of them are taller than me. They're like 6'1", 6'2", 6'3". Like Ocon's about close to 6'4".
Russell's a pretty tall guy.
Russell's really tall as well.
I thought they were short.
No.
Some of them are.
They're bigger
Some
guys.
of them are tall.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
One of them has a seatbelt issue, Alex Albon, where after the race, his shoulder is bleeding because the seatbelt digs into his shoulder so much that even through the race suit, he bleeds every race.
It feels like they could dedicate some of the budget to
I know
making their driver not bleed.
What is that?
It's a very aggressive like environment that they're in. Like the car is not meant to be comfortable for the driver. Like it isn't. You get as a driver, like this is what you have to work with. So you have to find different ways of making it comfortable for yourself. So, you know, sometimes drivers will wear knee pads.
Okay.
And knee pads are used because they'll, you know, bang up against the inside of the cockpit and everything. And for myself back in the day, I would sometimes wear like a plaster cast like around here on my hands.
Okay.
Because the steering wheel is literally chainsawing your hands. Like it's
wow.
It's a very unforgiving environment for sure. Plus the heat, right? Like it's
Well, how many pounds would you lose over the course of like 60 laps?
8 pounds.
Every race.
Yeah.
So, do race car again, very childish question. Do race car drivers love the winter then? Because like we're all usually waiting for the summer.
They're training, man. They're training. Like
I guess you're right.
That's their training blocks.
Passion.
Yeah.
I don't think they're rooting for not doing their job.
You know how you
Yeah, I guess you're right, but like you know how like
so if you show up and you're out of shape, right? Like you could last not even 2 laps in an F1 car. Like, first of all, if you knew what you were doing, you would probably last maybe 5 laps or whatever. But once your body starts to fatigue, because it will, you have to remember that there's G-forces literally shifting your organs. So you have to be strong so you can absorb that.
Yeah.
Right? And then you also have to have the endurance that you can make it last. Because once your body starts to go, your mind goes with it.
Yeah.
And once your mind starts to go with your body, you're toast.
This is hilarious to me because it was basically like within our lifetime that hockey players were like, hey, what if we exercised?
Yeah, they was it Danny Markov on the Leafs used to smoke between intermissions?
Dude, like everyone used to smoke between it.
Yeah, it's wild, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mario Lemieux.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
when he was torching guys and like going 1-on-3 and cutting through all these defensemen, he was just
Having a cigarette.
having a casual dart.
The one thing I'd say is, you know how like you always talk about when we talk about it on the podcast, Sidney Crosby, if you talk to him about anything other than hockey, probably doesn't have much to say. Like, and that's unfair to Sidney, but the obsession that hockey players have with hockey is it's all they do.
Yeah,
So-
he's everything is about hockey with him.
So when these guys go on vacation, some of them will like rent a yacht, and then most of them live in Monaco, and they'll hang out with their girlfriends or whatever. Fernando Alonso, 42 years old, he goes karting.
Yeah, he's shifter kart racing.
That's sick puppy stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Max
Love that,
Verstappen,
though.
who this original conversation was about, he loves to sim race. So when he's not on the racetrack, he virtual races.
Yeah.
At home. You know what's crazy about it too, Steve? There was a glitch in one of the video games last year that he was in a tournament, and it was Red Bull.
Was that the 24-hour?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a 24-hour Le Mans
Race.
online race.
Yeah.
Yeah, not even the real one.
So he
Sick puppy
So
stuff.
he pulls in, and by the
Wow.
way, you shift off. You got a team of drivers, right?
Yeah.
So he's on for his shift when they and the car digitally pulls into the garage, and then there's an issue with the game, and the car won't pull out. It's stuck in the
No.
garage. He loses his mind. Loses his
Well,
fucking
yeah,
mind.
he dedicated like an entire day of his life to this.
Yes. Loses his mind. And people were making fun of him. I'm like, man, I'd be pissed too. Are you kidding me?
I'd be furious.
Like, it's just a computer glitch. Like, he couldn't leave the garage.
Shoot.
Yeah. That wild? Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. These guys are just, that's it. This is it. This is all I do.
For someone like Max, he's the best for a reason. I don't know if you guys, Steve, you wouldn't know this, but do you remember the last qualifying lap in Monaco when he was down a second on the final turn?
An incredible lap.
On the final turn of the racetrack, he found a second within the turn that was faster than everybody else to gain back that 1.5 seconds and eventually finish first in qualifying and be on pole. He has this genius to him where he's able to get every single piece of time out of the race car, and it's incredible to see the best do his thing. It still doesn't excuse Sergio Perez.
Yeah. True.
To make it okay that Perez is not second. So it's such a tough conversation because I think he needs to step it up, even though Max is so much better than everyone else right now.
And I think it's also funny, Jesse, because when he does that, he rage races. So there's some people like Lewis Hamilton. It's almost like Buddha is inside him. He's calm. You know, he gets a little. He's like, "Come on, guys, we had a bad pit stop there." Like that's all you'll hear out of him. You'll never hear. Max is screaming at people, and there's a couple other drivers that are like that too. But Max is the most prominent, so you hear his clips screaming at his crew, and they're easily 20 seconds up on the rest of the field, and he's still like, "Not good enough." Not good enough. I always find what's so fascinating with human beings, and we saw this with like Kyle Lowry when he was with the Raptors. When he wanted to win, he got angry. Max is
Jose Bautista a little bit.
Yeah, like an FU sort of attitude, and I think Max has sort of got that.
No leaf in recent memory.
Yeah. About anything ever.
No.
You know, Jesse actually made a really good point, and I think it really sums up like Verstappen sort of as a whole. If you go back to Monaco, so Monaco is one of the more difficult racetracks like in the world because you're literally just skimming barriers at 300 kph. Like,
Oh my god.
like
man.
in barriers are like you literally will see like slow-mo shots of the cars like rubbing and pushing up against like steel barriers.
Because it's not a racetrack. They're
not-
literally just on the street of Monaco.
And you got to use as much of the road as you can because that's where the speed is around Monaco. But to do that, you have to be like inch perfect with your turn in, how much speed are you carrying, whatever. So in this qualifying session that Jesse's referring to, it was the very last like dying seconds of qualifying. Fernando Alonso is like on provisional pole. And I'm thinking, I'm sitting there on my couch, tracking this thing, and I'm like, there's no way that anyone's going to beat that. And Verstappen's down, like, it was quite a few, it was probably about 5 or 6 tenths. And he's coming through the last section of this racetrack. And I literally had to, like, do one of these when I was watching it because you could see when he turned in that he literally pushed the car into the wall, use as much of the road as he could. And then the braking zone is the same, like braking as deep as he could. And if he misses that sort of reference, he's going directly into a steel barrier head first. Using all of the road on the exit, he literally bounced the car off a wall to get pole position by like, it was about a tenth of a second maybe.
Wow.
But like he literally had to like make the decision that I'm either going to turn this thing into a ball or I'm going to get pole position.
It felt like the same way you feel when you see somebody score 4 goals or like a quarterback throw for 400 yards. Like it was just an incredible athletic feat.
Yeah, but like when Matthews scored 4 goals, I wasn't. There was no point where I was like, he might die.
Well,
Like,
Yeah.
the racing comes with that.
Man, this is dangerous. He should not go for 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a death aspect to it.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Dude,
That
that's
definitely
crazy.
is.
Like, that's so vivid. Turn it into a ball.
Yeah, literally.
I knew what you meant right away. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, that's literally probably what would have happened. But that
Maybe
for
I'll get
me-
Leo into golf.
That for me like sort of sums up like Max Verstappen and this season and the depths that he was going to go to make sure that he was number one.
Wow.
Yeah, that for me stands out the most.
How do these guys drive normally? Like on the street?
Yeah, Jesse, actually, yeah.
That's a good question.
Before the show, when we were waiting for you guys, you late guys,
Oh, sorry.
we were talking about, I was like,
My dog had a thing.
do you ever get a feeling where you just have some fun on the road? And
Tim?
No,
No?
never. I'm pretty safe driver because it's like you go to the racetrack to have your fun. Like, you can't do that on like the city streets. If you can't, like, because you're gonna hurt people, you're gonna hurt yourself. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, you go to the racetrack to have your fun, and then when you're on the road, you're pretty safe about it.
You've never like looked down at the speedometer and gone, whoop, shit, and like.
What are you talking about?
we're talking, you're not supposed to look down. When
Yeah,
you're
don't
driving.
ever look down.
You just got to look forward. You got to look as far into the distance as you can when you're driving.
Yeah, when you're on the racetrack, don't ever look down.
Yeah.
Like, ever. You want to
Right.
look as far ahead as you can. And with these drivers, like in Formula One, they have steering wheels that are like giant computers now. And they have to memorize every switch, every knob. So when they get information from their engineer to make an engine change or a brake balance change, they have to do it without looking down.
So again, I'm going to sound like a child.
So they have to
but
memorize everything.
There are cars now where your speed shows up in your windshield.
Yes.
Would
That's
they
okay.
have that?
No.
They don't have a windshield.
They don't have a windshield. Yeah.
Right. Holy shit.
Yeah. They got a helmet on, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all they got.
I did an exotic car experience last summer at the Toronto Sports Racetrack, and that's one of the first things they tell you. They say you're going to be tempted to look down at your speedometer because you're going 200 kilometers an hour and you want to look at it. But the best thing for you to do if you want to go fast and have as much fun as possible is to look to the road. Keep your
not
eyes
do
on
that.
the road and look towards where you're going.
Yeah,
You know?
100%. That's the best way of doing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, on the city streets, like I
Holy.
keep it pretty safe. Ferrari. So Ferrari's like the Toronto
Italian.
Maple Leafs of Formula One.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So maybe you
So-
want to change from like Red Bull Racing to
Yeah. Lots of
No.
money, lots of prestige, no success.
yes.
Got it.
This is their home race, so it's a big deal for them to
so
do
they're gonna
well at their home
choke.
race. They have had like a horrible season, like
Terrible.
Adam had mentioned earlier. Like,
Terrible.
It's been really bad, and they're coming off I would say as a team, they're coming off one of their worst races of the season in Zandvoort. Maybe not Carlos Sainz, who's one of their drivers, but Charles Leclerc.
He didn't finish.
Yeah, he didn't even finish, but he crashed in qualifying. Like, it was just a disaster of a weekend for him. And he's sort of supposed to be their, like, number one sort of star driver.
Okay.
But
It's feeling like if they don't pull it together soon,
They're going to have to figure something out.
well, I think what's with the interesting thing is that the onus has been on Ferrari. Publicly, the onus has been on Ferrari to give them a better car.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, you have to, as a driver, outperform your car, no matter where your car is on the grid.
Right.
You have to, if Formula One is 80 or 90% engineering, you got to be the extra 20%. And can you push it to 21 or 22%? And there are drivers who are outdriving their cars on the grid right now.
yeah.
Would
Albon.
well,
guy.
because Ferrari's obviously for a civilian to go out and buy a Ferrari, that's a status symbol. Would their futility on the racetrack hurt their reputation and sales or something?
I would say maybe back in the day, not so much now because they're such a strong brand and their sports cars are the best on the planet, right? There's not many other companies out there who are building supercars, sports cars that are like what Ferrari does.
But would an
that
F1
side of
fan be like, oh, you got a Ferrari?
I have a lot of.
I don't think so. What a loser.
It's not a bad question because if you think about Mercedes, where Mercedes was as a car brand, they never were recognized as a
Sports car
brand. They were recognized as a luxury brand. But then once they got into Formula One, they started winning championships. Their Mercedes AMG division, which is sort of the sports car side of things, started to really become popular. They sold a lot of product because of that. And so there is, like you said, there is sort of that simulation for sure. But for Ferrari, you have your die-hard Ferrari fans who are called the Tifosi.
Okay.
They live in Italy, and they're rabid Toronto Maple Leaf fans. They will wait outside Maranello to see if they can get a picture of one of the drivers.
Wow.
Whatever. They will be there. And then you've got your other Ferrari fans, which we have in Canada, there is a lot. I would say there's probably more Ferrari fans in Canada than any other of the teams.
Combined.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's so Italian.
Yeah.
A ton of
They're
Ferrari
tortured.
fans here.
Tortured, though.
And if you own, I have a few friends who own Ferraris, and they are die-hard Ferrari fans, and they get so upset when the team doesn't do well. So that's why I say they're
Okay, I'm getting it.
One day, Adam and and Tim, we can teach you about the process of owning a Ferrari.
Oh,
yeah, you got to go.
There's-
Yeah.
Well, you have to get in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It takes several years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is there a Ferrari YouTuber that loses their mind every time they...
Yeah, there's a few of them. Yeah.
Yeah?
I actually have never seen one. I was actually going to bring this up.
You could fill that gap. They do exist.
They'd have to pull the camera back a little bit, to integrate more hand gestures. But I'm assuming there would be a lot of animated.
It's an
anger.
entire country.
Yeah.
It's an entire country. It really is. It's crazy. And I don't mean Italians. I just mean Ferrari fans. They are an entire country. It's an enormous fan group. And you see them there. You'll see them this weekend. And they'll be there with the flag, huge. It looks like a soccer match, flags and flares and everything that you can think of. Just like last weekend in Zandvoort, which is in Holland, the Dutch fans for Max Verstappen, who is Dutch, orange everywhere, orange flares. They go on the road and they go to Austria and they go to when they had the French Grand Prix. It doesn't happen anymore. They're always there, always there. The Ferrari fans are just a berserk group of people.
Verstappen's got this song that these Dutch people made about him, and it's got tens of millions of views. And it's
like a chant. It's like a soccer chant.
It's Max.
Yeah. And they start. You can hear them. The cars you can hear on TV. You can also start to hear the Dutch chants for Max.
Stand free for Aberdeen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So anyway, Ferrari
football team.
Yeah.
Yes. So anyway, Ferrari, obviously they are the most successful team at this race. They've got 19 wins here, but can they do anything this weekend? I mean, Carlos Sainz feels that it's going to be a better weekend in Monza than it was in Zandvoort. But, that being said, I don't think anyone's beating Red Bull unless they really mess it up.
Yeah.
Did you see the Lando Norris Max Verstappen trophy?
Yeah, that's so in Hungary, Max won. And I guess porcelain is a big part of Hungarian culture, right? They have this beautiful. I didn't know.
I
that.
believe you.
And they made these trophies out of porcelain. They're all $250,000. And Lando Norris.
That's just a terrible recipe.
It's crazy. Yeah. So Lando Norris from McLaren accidentally knocked over Max's trophy.
You don't say.
Shattered it.
Obviously, it's made of porcelain.
And then made a joke and offended a lot of people.
Oh, no.
And all he said was like, he's like, oh, well, like, you know, I don't, he didn't say anything, but it was like, it's a deep cultural heritage thing.
Oh.
So they had to remake the trophy. And they like represented it to Max with Lando there, like apologizing. And it's just crazy.
They didn't let Lando
touch it.
They didn't let him touch it.
I mean, the number one thing you would expect to happen happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they got upset.
It's a miracle when it doesn't.
I guess I just don't know.
I think you're right.
In my Canadian ignorance, I'm like, well, yeah.
Adam, so McLaren. So Adam loves McLaren. And
Stupid.
like one of the things with McLaren is like when they started this season, like they were horrible. They were one of the worst teams on the grid.
But they're coming back.
They are coming back, which for Formula One, you know, we don't necessarily always see this type of comeback. Okay. It's pretty special, I would say, what McLaren's doing this season. They brought a new rear wing to Zandvoort. That really helped them quite a bit. They're introducing for this weekend, Adam, a new low drag wing for the entire race weekend. So you should be excited.
I am because I've been following a few of the guys that like track. I mean, it's like advanced stats in hockey. They track all the times and the quartering and the speed and all the other things. And McLaren's not. Their performance is good, but their drivers have really pushed them. So I'm excited for the car to get even better.
This is sort of what I was asking about earlier. So like you're going to be watching and be like, oh, that wing.
Yeah,
it's making the difference.
What's the lap time? They got a tenth of a second.
Yeah, which is a huge.
It is
deal.
a huge.
Game.
Yeah, it's a huge deal for sure. Williams as well. This is a track that for Williams as a team, probably they had circled on their calendar. So with Formula One teams, sometimes you have a team that's strong at certain tracks, like a hockey team is strong in a certain arena. It's, this particular team. Some of their stronger tracks were Spa, Canada, and then obviously Monza.
Fast tracks.
For sure. Vegas
Tennis
as
player
well.
on a different court.
Yeah.
Yep.
Clay versus grass. Yeah.
And so for this weekend, you know, this is a big weekend for Williams, for them to have an understanding to score some points. So they are a team to watch out for. Alex Albon, who we have discussed a tiny bit in the show today, he's this driver who was racing for Red Bull Racing. He was a Red Bull Racing driver. They paid for a lot of his racing coming up through his younger days, and he got called up to the big team to be Max Verstappen's teammate, and Max made mincemeat out of him, and they basically canned him. And he's got this resurgence here with Williams, and he's been pretty good.
He's been amazing. Yeah. This is a car, Steve. So I give you an idea. When I started getting back into Formula One, Williams was always a really big team when I was growing up. They used to win championships. Jacques Villeneuve was a Williams driver when he won. But they fell off. So their budget in like 2017, 2018 was $50 million. Ferrari and Mercedes were $600 million. So they couldn't compete. They just could not compete.
Yeah.
But because of the cost cap, because of the change in ownership and that sort of thing, the car is starting to get better, and it's a legendary name. So it's like if the Montreal Canadiens ran in last place for a decade.
Right, and then came back.
And then we're starting to climb, and you could start to see, So it's cool. It's cool to see, and a driver who got punted out of a program that's notoriously ruthless, and coming back with another program and pushing his way up. It's cool. It's a cool story. We like a comeback.
They also have an American driver, and so there hasn't been an American driver in Formula One for years, and an American driver who actually does well in a really long time. And for this driver, Logan Sargent, qualified 10th last weekend. Probably could have qualified a little bit higher if he hadn't had his crash. But that being said, he was like the first American to be in the top 10 on an F1 grid since like the 90s.
1993.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's odd because it's the one sport Americans don't dominate at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're always dominant in pretty much everything. Like with the exceptions being like cricket or whatever, but they're usually up there. the Olympics, at any of the international tournaments for sports, Americans are very athletic oriented. But this is the one thing,
Which is strange
because
because the money's there.
it's a very European sport until Liberty Media bought it.
Yeah.
So-
And I would say, like, for Logan, like, he hasn't scored, like, he's a rookie. This is his first year in Formula One. It's been definitely a learning curve for him, and he hasn't scored a point in F1. You get points from first place to 10th place. He hasn't even scored a point yet
At all.
at all. And so
That seems
the
bad.
question is, could this be the weekend where he scores his first point? What do you think? It's attracted, like, again, like they've had this
Jesse?
circled on the calendar.
Jesse?
I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's been a little bit of progress, which is something I can't say like earlier in the season where it just kind of stagnant. So I don't know. Fingers crossed.
I'm gonna say yes because he's in my grid rival pool.
Yeah.
He's my least expensive driver in my grid rival pool. So yes, go Logan.
I'm going to say no because I saw the faces you guys made when you asked the question.
I won't put money on it, but I'm hopeful that this is the week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree
Yeah.
with Jesse. Steve, thanks very much for taking the time to do this. Really appreciate it, man.
Buddy, thanks for having me.
You got to check out Drive to Survive, isn't it?
Yeah, we're telling
One
you, man.
episode, yeah.
One episode.
There's a commitment I have this summer that I stupidly agreed to, and once that commitment is over, I will watch it.
Okay.
Okay, give it first season. Give it 5 episodes.
Yeah.
maybe?
Yeah. You got to. It's like Breaking Bad. You got to get it
Watch
into
the
it.
whole thing.
Just
watch it.
Just watch it.
Just watch it. It's good.
Yeah.
It sounds easier than Game of Thrones, which you were telling me, like, oh, simply watch
Yes.
the longest series ever.
With a very disappointing ending.
Yeah, you want me to watch every episode of The Simpsons too?
Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot.
No,
Yeah.
you want to get into F1, like that's the easiest barrier.
And
for
you will love it.
casual fans.
I know you'll love it. I know you'll love it.
I know all of it.
It's. I mean, there's a reason why it's once people get in, they become fanatics pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Adam, thanks very much for taking the time.
Tim, thank you for having us.
Jesse, thanks again, man. I really appreciate
No
it.
problem.
You've been watching The Island of the Apex. Please head over to Spotify, give us a 5-star rating and a follow. Same goes with Apple Podcasts as well. Write a review. It really helps us grow the show. You can watch us on YouTube, and you can follow me on social media at Tim Haraney. Guys, thanks again. This has been great. Appreciate it.